All right, here we go. All right, welcome to Behind the Bar. I'm your host, Andy Johnson, where I interview my good friends and fellow dry bar comedians. If you're not familiar with dry bar, they've put out a ton of clean comedy specials. You can view them anywhere specials are streamed on the Dry Bar app all over the place. And so this is Behind the Bar. We get a chance to meet some of the Dry Bar comedians and get a little behind the scenes and chit chat, right? Behind the Bar is sponsored by RX Solutions. If you're underinsured or not insured and you want to save 75% on your prescriptions, go to rxsolutions.online. And my first guest ever on my podcast is a good friend, as you can see, his dry bar special is called, what is it? Most of this is
baby fat.
Most of this is baby fat, from Raleigh, North Carolina. You might have seen him on Stand Up Nashville. We've worked together. We've hung out a time or two before. Please welcome AndyForrester.
Howdy.
What's up, brother?
Not a lot. In yourself?
Good, man. I can't. I'm really excited to get to talk to you, man. We don't get to talk enough.
I know. I do enjoy it. That is the crazy part about doing comedy is you make these friends and you're like, all right, I hope I get to work with them again. And then depending on your level or whatever happens or transpires or a pandemic and you don't get to work with them again or not for a while. So it's disappointing.
Yeah. I think the last time we ran into each other was in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think I may have been hosting an open mic and you were working that weekend or something, but whatever the reason is, you're right. When we get to a certain point, we're either headlining the same rooms or we're crossing paths. So
it's kind of, that's therein lies the fun part of like a festival, is if you can get to a festival and hopefully your friends show up to that, your fellow comedian friends that show up to that festival. Then you get to hang out and it's almost like there's no worry about like, shows and stuff like that. Cause you're performing, but you know what I mean? So yeah.
It is the best time. I mean, I think obviously we both get a thrill from being on stage, but I think some of the best times we've had is when we get to hang out with the comics backstage or green room or after.
I definitely have and I'm not a drinker, so I don't always get to hang out the same way other guys hang out or ladies and whatever. Like, I'm never like, let's go hang out at the bar. Or if I do, I'm just sitting there going like, where's the food? So like I do love it. I love hanging out and that sort of thing. So it is something that's I don't want to say I miss it because I still do it, but I don't get to do it as often. So
yeah, I think I've gotten to the age now where it's like, I work a gig and people are like, let's go to a bar and hang out. And again, I want something to eat. I never eat before a show. And then if we do eat and they're like, let's go out. I'm like, what time is it? Like 11? I
have responsibilities. That is the thing. I have other responsibilities.
But there's no excuse because you're there. It's a Friday night and then you have a Saturday show. So they know you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, my back just hurts. I just want to lay down.
That is absolutely true. Yes. Yeah.
I've met some really, really young comics lately. Maybe not young age-wise, but just starting out emceeing. And do you find now that you've gotten the dry bar, you get contacted a little bit more as far as comics, not only asking how do they get dry bar, but like for advice and how's that working for you?
Absolutely. I get people asking me like, how did you get it? That kind of thing. And
how did you get it? Of all people?
It's funny when you say it, it's because that's what I was thinking in my head is like, sometimes it feels like I feel like if people are approaching me, then they're like, well, if you can get it, so you know what I mean? Like, I don't know the best way to put that because I'm not trying to sound insulting, but it's like, but it does kind of have that feeling of like, well, I mean, how did you get it? Because if you can get it, any of us can get it. And so, but yeah, that is that. I definitely have had numerous people, and I straight up tell them, that I lucked out. I performed in front of a booker who has a connection with Dry Bar, and like about a month after I performed in front of, he'd only ever seen me the one time, and after I performed in front of him, he like messaged me. It's like, hey, did I offer you a Dry Bar comedy special? I'm like, I didn't know you could just hand them out willy-nilly.
Right.
but he had the connection, and you know, a little later, a couple of months later, he just was like, all right, give me some dates in April. It was like 2019, I think, and
Wow.
there we were. So
Yeah. I remember, it's funny. I remember really thinking about my word choice. So I filled in at the Comedy Zone in Jacksonville, last minute feature act, middling for a headliner.
Mhm.
And her dry bar special had been launched that very day. It was a Thursday. So I was doing
Right.
it. So I wanted to ask her, how did you get it without coming across as
how did you get it?
because she more than deserves to get it. So I didn't
Right.
want her to perceive that.
Of
So
course.
I think I said something like, what was the process for submission to dry bar?
Yeah.
I'm very select. I don't know about you, but I'm very selective. And I've referred a few people to dry bar, but I have to be very selective. I mean, I've gotten like 20 requests and I can't,
Yeah.
flood the booker that I know with these requests,
Yeah. I tell people how it worked for me, and again, I'll tell you that the crazy part about it is that I had that gig, and the day before I was in Nashville filming something with Killer Bees, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so I'm filming something with Killer Bees, and Russ Nagel is there. Do you know Russ Nagel?
I've met him a few times. He's got a
Yeah.
very popular dry bar.
Yeah, and he's a biker comedian, works on cruise ships, very funny, super nice guy. And we were talking, and he said, have you looked into doing a dry bar? I'm like, I don't know how you go about that.
Right.
Like I don't have a manager, I don't have an agent, like so I'm like, I don't. And he said, oh, well, I'll just give you the guy's name who owns it.
Right.
And so he gave me the contact information. I sent the guy an email, and probably a week or two after that, send him an email with all the stuff you need to do normally. And so when I got contacted so the next day after I saw Russ Nagel, I did that show with the booker that got me the dry bar.
Right.
And so he didn't contact me till like a month later. And so when I talked to him, I was like, well, technically I've emailed the guy at Dry Bar. Yeah. And he said, well, let's not have too many spoons in the pot. Let's just hold off, because we don't want to beat a dead horse type thing.
Right.
And so we waited, and so that was like October. And then in December, the booker contacted me again. He's like, did you ever hear anything? I'm like, no. He goes, all right, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I'll tell you that it is good that that his word is good enough.
Yeah.
That they trust him. You know what I mean? Like, they don't, like, I think when you do late night, they want to see what you're going to do. They take you out to like, clubs, and they're like, well, maybe drop this joke, do that joke. Yeah. Dry Bar's like, we trust that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Enough that you're going to show up, work clean, and make them laugh, and that you're, and they send you a bunch of stipulations and that kind of thing. So, that is, to me, one of the funniest things is the video that they send you to tell you how to be Dry Bar clean.
Right.
And
it's the 10-page contract.
Yes, the contract and all that stuff. But the video, they highlight Karen Runtowski, who I love. I think she is hilarious. And they were like, you can't say, oh my God, because to the Mormon culture, that's like saying GD. And I'm like, all right, got it. But they said, or you can, here's one way to handle it.
Right.
So I think they show you a clip from Karen's, like, the second show of the night, because she's like, look, we've already established that I can't. We've already established I can't stop saying, oh my God, so please don't take offense to it.
Right.
And it is, I don't mean anything against your religion or your culture.
Yeah.
It's like a nervous thing I can't seem to stop. So we got that out of the way.
Right.
So let's just know I can't. Oh my God, the other day. And so that's what she did. She just went, oh my God, the other day. And I laughed so hard because I don't think she did it on purpose. I don't think she said, oh my God, on purpose. I think that literally that's how she is. She's, oh my God. And I laughed so hard. I messaged her. I was like, listen, this is like one of the funniest parts of this whole thing is watching you not be able to not say, oh my God. I loved it. I thought it was so. She said to me that despite all the rules and everything, when they were done with hers, they really wanted to call it "Oh my God." They couldn't, but they wanted to. Yeah, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been so. That would have been so great.
Yeah, you hit on a couple things. So the late night TV shows also make you type out your jokes.
Oh, okay.
And submit like a written. Not that I know. Don't you love it when audience members do that? Hey, you were really funny. You should do Jimmy Fallon. Oh. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. Oh man, look, if somebody says that to me, I'm like, what? Who do you know? Like that's what I'm like. Yeah, I've had people be like, you should have your own Netflix special. I'm like, let's do it. You make it happen. I'm fine with it.
So I don't know about you, but when I filmed mine, which was only shortly before yours, a couple months, I think.
Yeah, because I kept asking you for a bunch of hints and tips and tricks.
Yeah. And mine's 37 minutes. I don't know how long I think yours is 27.
It's like 22 or 3. And so when I signed up for it, it was December of 2018. Okay. And when I agreed to do it, they were like, all right, get your 40 minutes ready. We're looking forward to it. I'm like, me too. Wow. This will be awesome. And then, so I was filming in April of 2019. And a month before I was filming, they emailed me and said, all right, we're looking forward to your 25 minutes. And I was like, yeah, exactly. So I emailed them and I was, I wasn't mad or anything, but I like to know I like to plan ahead, And so I'm like, hey, just curious. When I signed up to do this, it said 40 minutes. Now you're saying 25. I'm just curious what's going on. Right. And they were like, well, it's gotten really popular. And we were filming 2 comics a night, for 2 separate shows. And now we're doing 3 comics a night. So we're taking the time and splitting it between 3 comics.
Yeah.
Because, what your audience may or may not know, but typically a comedy show should be about an hour and a half.
Right.
You got to have time to like strike it and go between the shows or whatever. And so 25 minutes for each comic. I think you're right. Mine is probably 27, 28 now that you say that. Yeah, mine is, because I went a couple of minutes over, and she even said, because if you go over, it's not the end of the world, because we'll edit it and we don't want it to ruin the flow of how things play out. So you're right. I think
they say do 2 shows, same joke, same outfit.
So yes and no. I did almost the same jokes the second show, but one of the things you don't know is the other comics that you're working with for the night and their material.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what happened is I was in the middle. And so the lady who was going first, she was finishing with a Planet Fitness joke.
Okay.
And I had it set up where like jokes number like 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. I have like 2 Planet Fitness jokes. And I told them in the first show, and they were all right, but they didn't go over as well as I know they would if somebody hadn't just talked about it. I mean, it's it's very inside comedy, but if somebody else talks about a topic that was already covered, unless they're like referencing it and then building on it in that way, but you can't do that with a comedy special.
Yeah.
So I knew I couldn't like do that. So the second show, I completely got rid of the Planet Fitness jokes, moved another joke in that place, and it worked out great. So
doesn't that say, I mean, isn't that a comfort knowing all your hard work over these years where you can just shift gears and move material around?
It really is, because honestly, it's one of those, like I moved that joke. It had been sitting, at the halfway point of my sets when I would perform elsewhere, or, maybe 2/3 in, and I moved it to the front, and I'm like, I think I'm going to keep it here. And it was a joke I'd been telling for a while, but it's one of those, because I sat there, I'll tell you one of the, I think you struggle with what is your set list going to be for a dry bar comedy special, for numerous reasons. You want to know, all right, well, I mean, for me personally, I believe you as well. Like I work clean. That's what I do.
Right.
But at the same time, it's my version of what I think is clean. I don't swear a lot. very, very minimal, depending on where I am. But for the most part, I don't. And I definitely don't talk about sex.
Right.
Like I tell people all the time, I don't talk about sex with my wife. I'm not going to do it with a room full of strangers. So like but at the same time, like I have a joke where I sing some heavy metal songs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to sing the heavy metal songs
right
at the dry bar thing. I'm just for this, that, and the other reason, I'm just not going to do it. So I'm kind of pondering over, and I had asked them ahead of time, can I say poop or crap?
Right.
And they were like, and when I signed on to do it, they weren't, they hadn't blown up on Facebook as much as they have now. And they were all about, you watch it through their app. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And so, how their app works is people can go and they'll get rid of jokes that may or may not be offensive to people if you want it to. That's how their app was work. It was designed. I mean, honestly, it was designed for the Mormon community to watch stuff and be like, well, I don't want to watch a joke about, whatever it is. And so, so I was sitting in the airport getting ready to fly, and I had posted, something, and Leanne Morgan starts texting me. She and I are friends. I've worked with Leanne Morgan, and I love her. She is hilarious. And she just said, you do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Because they've got their rules. And she says, I know that when I filmed mine, and her friend Karen Mills, when she filmed hers, she said, both of us were so hung up on that we were so worried. And she goes, you don't worry about that. She says, just go and do what you're going to do. And I had not planned on doing, it's like a hoarder's joke. And I say cat crap a bunch of times. And I had debated about it. And I was like, nope, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. It gets a good laugh, like this. So, and it worked out. Like, you do, like, having done it, you do realize later, you're like, yes, they are aiming for the Mormon population with their comedy, but at the same time, they're clearly aiming for around the world, and people all around the world. So if you say something that it's not technically offensive, but it, whatever, then it's not going to count against you, because that's kind of, and it's not a dig at the dry bar people, because honestly, it's a good model. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good business model of, like, people ask me who don't know, they're like, well, what do you mean by dry bar? I'm like, look, it's literally a dry bar. Like, they serve soda and candy and popcorn.
Right.
And, you'll get that. It's just like when if you happen to mention you're a clean comedian, like, people be like, oh,
yeah.
It's the same thing. They're like, a dry bar. I'm like, yeah, but think about it. I was like, I perform in clubs and places all over where they serve alcohol, and these drunk people won't shut up.
Yeah.
And if they weren't drunk, they wouldn't do that. But because they are, they've lost all their inhibitions. So that to me, that is the genius aspect of it, is the fact that it's like, I mean, I think they do it because of the clean comedy and the Mormon aspect. And I don't mean to keep bringing Mormons up, but it is in Utah. You film it in Utah, and they mention that, like, numerous times, of like, you are going to be performing in front of people, some of whom are Mormon. So.
Right. And I think it's what I liked about it was it's these are real comedy fans that really want to laugh and show up and pay attention and not interrupt and laugh. The guy, I filmed it when it was just two. So it was me and one other guy who's I'm afraid to say, I don't think his was ever published.
I had heard that happens every now and then.
Well, in watching his, and he's a very funny comedian, it doesn't seem that he read any of the guidelines.
Yeah.
So I never followed up with him, but he's still doing well. He's still getting booked or whatever. But here's an interesting thing too. So we talked about that woman who kept saying, oh my God. So a buddy of ours, Tom, in the Carolinas, Atlanta area as well, he has a dry bar.
Yeah.
And he has a joke where he says, Jesus Christ, in his joke, right? So he replaced it with cheese and rice. right? So in his dry bar special, he says cheese and rice, but the subtitles,
oh, that is awesome,
say Jesus Christ.
that's awesome.
Like he went to all that trouble to change
yes,
it, a joke he'd probably done many, many times.
yeah.
So, but
I think that is the, you know, I probably had like two, you know, because you do end up examining your set in a way where you're going word for word, what do I normally say?
yeah.
And, you know, I had a part, it's the cat within the cat crap joke is I act like I walk into somebody's house that smells like cat crap, and I would bend over and say, oh my God. And so I had to teach myself for about a month or two to say like, oh my goodness, or, you know, like like if I didn't say, oh my God, normally I'd be like, oh, good Lord, or something like that. But you're like, okay, that can't be any better. And so I just came up with something else. And I'm sure it was like, oh my goodness, what is that? And
Jiminy Fiddlesticks.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you say Jiminy Fiddlesticks, gosh knows what the
right.
What the
whole Fiddlestick family in the back row. We're all Fiddlesticks here.
Yeah. Yeah, but what's the caption gonna be when you say Jiminy Fiddlesticks?
How do you spell Fiddlesticks, Tom?
Yeah. I think he cursed. He really did.
I don't think he's gonna. But they give you then feedback. Like so I did the 2, and they give me these forms to fill out, and they put what do you like, what do you don't like, you know, what don't you like. And I think for me, I just think they took my entire second show. First show was the most nervous I've ever been. I didn't come across like that, people tell me.
Right.
But it's so different when we've filmed, both of us filmed different television stuff. Right. It's so different preparing for that, because it's not like a show where you do an hour and you leave the venue and it's not recorded and you're like, oh, whatever happened.
Yeah.
And now it's like, this is on tape and you have almost no control whatsoever over it. It's like,
like I remember because I'm a sweater. I sweat a lot, and profusely.
Yeah.
And I told the makeup artist this.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, I've got you covered.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna and she was super nice.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm just gonna spray this on you and it'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And I know me, like I sweat. This is where I sweat. Like I sweat from the head.
Yeah.
You know, I've been around other dudes and they sweat from their armpits or, you know, chest or whatever. I'm like, it is all here and it just pours down.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think it's my body's way of going, you should be nervous. Come on, let's be nervous. You should. I mean, and I'm fat and I'm fat too. But a lot of times, like, even if it's nice and chill, I'll be sweating. And so she was like, see, it'll work perfect. Well, you know, she goes and takes pictures during my set and shows them to me. Like, look, see, your viewers, and I'm not plugging my set, go watch my dry bar special. And I'm sure it's 5 or 10 minutes into it, I am pouring sweat off my face.
Really?
So yeah. But I
didn't notice. I just watched it again yesterday. I didn't notice.
I guess it's me, you know, at one point I do something and then my hair is like sticking to my forehead and that kind of thing. So it's probably not as bad as I have been at like other shows. Like I did a show outside the other night and good gosh.
That's the worst.
I know. And it rained. I performed in the rain outside. Good times. Yeah. So yeah, it was, you know, I appreciate that they have something that hopefully will help you not sweat.
Yeah.
But I think for me, you know, I tend to perform in a suit coat typically because of my last joke, which I can do it with any top, you know, t-shirt, you know, whatever. So it doesn't matter. I don't know. I just kind of always liked wearing a suit coat when I perform. And so the crazy thing is I used to tell that joke, my closer joke, I used to tell it in the middle of my set. And then if I was like done with that joke, I would just take the jacket off because I'm like, I don't need this anymore. And then I moved it to the end because it worked so well at the end. And I'm like, I am wearing this stupid jacket for one joke at the very end, like a moron.
It's a great closer. It's the turtle bit, right? What's the turtle name?
Tortoise. The tortoise, lost tortoise. So, and I thank you. I appreciate it. It is a lot of, I mean, and it's a true sign too. I've even had people come up to me who live here where I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they said they know the guy that posted the sign years ago. They were like, he's a vet and they're like, he's a vet and he lives in our neighborhood. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. So,
they did the makeup, like I do the same. I'm the same way. So I sweat everywhere.
Yeah.
So she goes, let me do this thing. She does this like layer of stuff and then sprays it. And in all honesty, it worked for me, except for my body, right? So I felt the sweat just dripping down underneath the shirts. And then if you watch, like on my dry bar special, like I was so afraid to touch my face. Like if you watch it, whenever I have an itch, you see me go like this. And I didn't want to scratch any of the makeup off. If I was afraid, if I like wiped like this makeup, it would just be sweating on one side.
I love that. I love, you know, it is that, it is that way. I bet women think about the makeup, you know, all the time because they're wearing it and they don't want to do stuff to mess up their makeup. And when I'm filming something, I know that a makeup artist just did. And I also am of the belief of like, you can't fix this. This is pretty bad. So like, you know, you can do whatever you want. Like there's way too many freckles on here. You can't get rid of them. And, you know, so I don't know what you're trying to do, but so I filmed something different last year, and I put on a Spider-Man mask as one of my newer jokes. And right before I went up, I told the makeup artist, like, I forgot to tell you I put on a Spider-Man mask. And she was like, oh, well, so she did something similar to the sweat thing. Let's spray your face with this. So and it did get on the mask. And I was, and because I have a Spider-Man mask and I'm a big fan of Spider-Man, I was so worried if I washed it that it would just disintegrate. Right. So I didn't wash it for a while. I just washed it a couple of weeks ago. It smells so good now. I'm so excited. But it is kind of crazy. You know, the stuff that you don't think of when you're filming that, you know, and then the one thing I'll say, and I assume you'll agree, is that the people who put on the dry bar comedy, all behind the scenes, the nicest people.
First class. It was first class all the way.
Yeah, it was so, like, they were so nice. And I honestly like wanted to like hug everybody at the end of the night. And they kind of had this look in their eyes, like, we do this all the time. Leave us, you know.
What is your name again? You went up again?
Yes. Yeah.
No, they weren't like that.
And then I get it. You know, I totally get it. I'm like, oh, I know. But I was just like, I'm
just another comedian.
And again, I have filmed some other stuff, but I've yet to do like a late night TV show thing. So I haven't done anything that's like, and here's what network it's on type thing, you know? So I'm not on HBO. I haven't been on NBC or anything like that. So all of my stuff is like, well, you can find it on the internet.
Right.
And it, to me, it doesn't make it less than what it is.
Right.
But it, you know, I think all of us would prefer to have, you know, the credit of late night TV or Comedy Central or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can just.
I reached out to Huckabee's show.
Yeah.
I mean, and I haven't, you know, I've talked to them here and there, but nothing's come of that. But I was like, I'm ready. I mean, I think you and I are more than ready than.
Yeah. I know Moody Malavi's been on there, and Lee Harden's been on there. Yeah. I think Brian Bates was on there recently. So numerous dry bar comics. I mean, I think they kind of look for comics from the dry bar comedy, you know, and they're like Gutties, the comedy club Gutties. They seem to look for dry bar comics because they promote clean comedy at their club. So there's definitely people. And I think you were saying, have you had more people reach out to you? I've had a bunch more bookers reach out to me because I'm still in the position of like, I have to reach out to people to get work. But definitely when it came out, I had people contacting me.
Sure.
And, you know, like, all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, this is awesome. This is what I want. And then you're like, well, how much do I charge? You know, because I don't have a manager. I don't, you know, I try to, you know, I'm also a graphic designer by trade. And so I've had the same problem with doing graphic design for almost 30 years now, where I'm like, what do I charge people? You know, which shouldn't be it's just not one of those things they teach you in college. They don't go like, now look, when you're charging people.
We can talk offline if you want about, like, especially golf and country clubs and private gigs, kind of what the scale is I use, you know, to charge.
I would love to know that, because only so I can get an idea. I'm like, well, have I been charging people correctly, or have I been undercharging? I never want to overcharge. And you know, I certainly have quoted people. Somebody wanted me to come to Texas like in 2020 maybe, and they were like, "Will you come to this little town in Texas?" And I quoted them a big amount, and I never heard back from them because I was like, I'm gonna have to come down during a pandemic, fly, and like risk my life to come tell you jokes. So I'm like, I don't, and it's not that I don't want to, but if I'm gonna do it, we're gonna get paid because I'm gonna have some hospital bills when I get back. You know what I mean?
Sure. So. And there's ways to negotiate and help them offset the cost. Are they charging? What's the head count? Are you charging admission? How long you want me to do? Maybe I can do less time for less money, whatever. So we could talk about that. But so we both experienced really positive stuff from the dry bar. Have you ever, not necessarily negative stuff, but not heard back from certain things? Like, so I'll give you an example. Like I consider my dry bars like the best quality video. Yes. Some of my best jokes. So those jokes I specifically chose in my dry bar are in the process, if not already retired, right?
Right.
I've submitted the links to festivals, whether it's the Big Sky one that I would love to do or whatever, and not gotten it. And I was like, oh wow, that hurts.
Yeah.
Like,
This
is it. This is my best.
I'll tell you the one that's so I did a festival in Greensboro, North Carolina here, and probably in 2019, maybe, because my special was released in August of 2019, and then the festival was like a month or so after, maybe like September, October that year. So when I was there, they had an agent from America's Got Talent there, scoping people out, and I know the people who own the club in Greensboro, North Carolina. I started doing improv comedy with them in like 99. So they're like my oldest friends in comedy. And so they like me a lot and think I'm pretty good. So they told the lady, you got to come over to the club at this time. Cause they got shows all over town. You need to come to the club at this time. You need to see this dude. And they may not have said this dude, but she came to that show.
Right.
And I didn't, like, I may have known it, but I just didn't think anything of it. I'm like, well, she's probably not really here to see me. So show's over. People were kind of eating it because I felt like they were like during that show, I felt like they were trying to be like alternative, for lack of a better term. Like, let's do weird stuff, and the audience was like,
yeah.
So I do what I do. It went over really well. And I ended up talking to that lady. So she's been trying to, long story short, she's been trying to pitch me to America's Got Talent for like 3 years now.
Wow.
And so I remember this year when she was trying to get me to do it, or, the end of last year, I should say, she was like, well, do you have anything new? And in my head, I'm like, my dry bar comedy clips are the best clips. And why would like, they're the best quality. And if I've never been on the show, then what?
New? Does she mean new material, new videos,
new material, new videos? Yeah, I know. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, and I guess, what she has to do is she finds the talent, and then she has to like push it on to the producers to see if they will like the person. Right. So I guess the producers are the same people, and it's like, well, they really like you. What else do you have, kind of thing. Right. And so, I don't have the raw footage. I know one guy I know got the raw footage from Dry Bar, so he can like cut it up and make his own clips.
Oh, wow.
I thought about asking for that because when you have Dry Bar comedy clips, they will be like 3 to 6 minutes, somewhere in between there. Right. And sometimes I wouldn't mind having it where I could do like little 30-second, whatever, but it's fine. But so I didn't know, when she said that, I'm like, all right, well, I'll get my camera out this weekend and I'll film some of my newer jokes. Yeah. And I filmed a bunch of newer jokes. And then she was like, do you have anything that's not COVID related? And I was like, okay, I'll, so it, but I haven't, to me, the only thing is like when you see people who just kind of have that mentality of like, oh, clean comedy, and those Gutties comedy clubs, they I know they're struggling a little bit. And I just said to them, the Brian Regan model is you're a clean comedian. You don't go tell people. Yeah. You just get out there, do what you do. People love it. And then maybe one day they go, you know what? He's a clean comedian.
Yeah.
I said, so you kind of have to run that model with your clubs of like, just book clean comics and tell them it's a comedy club. And then they get there and they're like, well, he didn't talk about his private parts.
That's funny.
Like what
because
that's,
I had to stop. I asked people to stop booking me as a clean comedian. Unless they already have advertised it to their neighborhood church or whatever, like
right.
So I remember doing a comedy club here in Florida, and the host gets up and he goes, this is Friday night, first show. He goes, all right, everybody, you're I guess he has a normal routine that he opens up the show with that's really dirty. And he goes, I can't do what I normally do because this is a clean comedy weekend. And everybody was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
I was like, no, not bad. Good.
Yeah.
Like, don't. So then, now they didn't promote it that way, and it should just be fine. I'm just going to do whatever.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Nate Bargatze years ago, and Bargatze, I can never remember quite how it's pronounced, but he was on that show that would come on late at night on Comedy Central after midnight or whatever it was, or at midnight with Chris Hardwick was the host, and it's like a game show with comedians. And so he told me he was on there, and Chris Hardwick introduces him as one of the cleanest comedians working in the country. And he's like, I don't need that. Like, you don't need to do that. Like, just introduce me as, one of the hardest work or whatever it is, but you don't need to do that. And so like, I'd had a gig sometime, it was either this year or last year. And this guy he goes, like, he showed me his flyer for it or whatever. And, or he said he promoted it as a G-rated comedy show. And I said, no, I said, G-rated is for Disney movies. I said, it's not, I said, it's never G-rated.
Right.
So I was like, I said, I'm not going to be cursing and I'm not going to talk about sex. I said, but it's still not G-rated. I said, if you want to maybe say family friendly, I said, but even then, I said, just tell him it's a dang comedy show. Like, and he gets really, in this particular, Booker gets kind of hung up on the different levels of G, PG, R, whatever. So he has a stoplight and he's like, oh, this is going to be a red light show, or this is going to be a green light. I'm like, yeah. So, yeah. So, and it's fine. I get it that he has a different mindset. That's fine. I'm still going to come out and do what I do. Yeah. Like, one of my favorites is Patton Oswalt, and I love a story of him showing up. He got booked at a college. He shows up at the college, and then they give him all the rules right before he goes on stage. And he was like, do you know who I am? Like, did you look me up before you booked me? Right. And he, they're telling him, oh, you can't say this, you can't say. And he went out there and he said everything he wanted to. And because they didn't research who they were hiring, or who they were going to see, and that kind of thing. And so, that is, and I don't mean to lead off, into Never Neverland, but like, that is one of my things about when people go to a comedy show and get offended at stuff. I'm like, there's a phrase amongst comedians, like, know your audience. I said, but honestly, the audience really should know their comics. Right. Like, you should know who you're going to see, even if you're just going to see comedy. Like, look it up. Just, maybe a week before the show, who's going to be there? Well, let's look him up, see if he's got something. I said, and find out. I said, and if you watch a couple of clips and you're like, he's hilarious or she's great, awesome, go to the show. I said, but if you're like, he said a lot of racist stuff, then don't go.
Yeah. The whole goal of a comedian, and whatever topic they are talking about, is to make people laugh. It's not to make fun of your specific situation, even if you have it, whatever triggered you. Yeah. Our goal is not to be mean-spirited towards table 17. It's to make everyone
real specific, Danny. That seems real specific.
I've always had a problem with table 17. 18's good.
Yeah. But I love that.
It's like it baffles me.
It really does. And it's, and I have offended people, and I'm baffled by it. I'm like, Keith Alberstadt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he and I worked together numerous times. I love him. He's one of my favorites. He should be way more famous than he is. Yeah. And, I said to him, do you ever, every now and then I have this thought, like, I wish I was more prolific. I wish I was like Bill Hicks,
right?
Or I wish it was like Bill Burr or any other Bill. Just somebody who did
Not
a really
any other Bill.
yeah. Yeah, not necessarily. Yeah. One in particular, maybe not as much.
Right.
But somebody who does such a good job of commenting on the ways of the world and putting it in a light that just makes you laugh.
Yeah.
But also getting across a great point about hypocrites and bigots and whatever. Like I would love to be like that, but I am just a ball of silly.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I'm like a dumb comedian. I mean, I think I try to write clever, but at the same time, I just and I will occasionally write stuff like that, but it doesn't go well with who I am on stage and my act. So I just am like, it's more just like me ranting on paper and then just moving on, unless it's like a really good one and I feel like I could find a place to squeeze it in type thing. And you learn that over the years. You're like, all right, well, if I tell a politician joke, I haven't said one thing about politics the whole time, and I make this one joke, it sits there like a turd because it's like that didn't
Out
fit.
of place.
Yeah. So and if I see somebody who I'm like, maybe that would go well for them,
right?
But I don't know people out telling jokes I've passed on to them, which is fine. I don't care. So but and that's what Keith said. Keith was like, yeah, I just want to make them laugh. I'm like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I really just want to, I want, to me, they came to escape from the horrible crap on TV.
Yeah.
And so like, let's just be silly. When I'm self-deprecating, most of the jokes, even if it seems like I'm making fun of this class of people or this type of thing, I'm like, really, if you pay attention, I'm the butt of the joke almost 90% of the time, that are my kids. So it's like I am making fun of that sort of thing. And I think when there's stupid people in the world and there's like topics about like just stuff you hear about then that's a little different. I don't think I'm making fun of people as much as I am just, can you believe the story I heard? But yeah, I'm with you, man. I wouldn't say nobody. I think I have met comics that love they like to insult people. They like doing that.
How offensive can I be?
Yeah, they like they want to be shocking, and they love they love roasting people and that kind of thing. And like, it's just not me, man. I am that is not my kind of I don't know. I'm always been way more silly than I am like a because I think you can be serious and make people laugh. But it doesn't always work, and I want it to always work.
Yeah. But I think those comics that when we think about several things, right? So those comics we think about that really are social game changers, right? So whether it's the Bill Hicks, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, that drive this, maybe not drive, but they influence this social.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, throughout comedy, we're talking about maybe a dozen people out of how many comics, right? So we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to the greats,
Yeah, no, and I know that, but I meet guys that do that kind of thing. They do and I don't even know if I'm saying the right phrase to it or even if I have one of the type of comic that they are, but I just did you watch that George Carlin documentary on HBO?
I did, yeah.
So good.
Very good.
That thing is so good. And I always liked him, but it gives you a very interesting perspective on him. And when you see people like Stephen Colbert going, I loved him, but he lost me towards the end. And you're like, I can see that. I can see that. And like he gets real cynical. He's like, human beings are the, worst. They're never going to change. And you're like, I don't get me wrong. I have that same mentality some days, but I'm like, but I don't.
His wife, or at the time, was like, in private, he loved people individually. He's a person. He just
the groups,
were
the group.
I think it also too, when you say you're not saying anything, like, some of my favorite bits in your special, I wrote them down, right? Snoring awake, hoarders, I love when you said, speaking of diabetes. You weren't even talking about it. It was great. Such a great segue, because I think before that you had said, how was everybody's Christmas? Which made no sense. And you're like, I don't even know how to get into that next joke.
Oh yeah, I have a joke about buying a turntable, and I didn't know how to get into it, so I was like, "How's it? Y'all ready for Christmas?" And like I think I said that on the special of like, I never know how to get into this next joke, so this is how I do it.
Yeah.
And it went over so well that I like, that's how I do it now on stage. I don't think I did it quite that way before, and now I do, because I'm like, if I tell that, because honestly, the turntable joke doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't have the best punchline, but it's way more about like looking real dumbfounded at the fact that my wife's like said that, so that you're like, I just like making goofy faces about it. But I have over the time worked up better, like if I could do it again, that particular joke again, I would be like, either leave it out, or I'd be like, all right, let's do it like this. So but yeah, the diabetes one, I have a diabetes joke, and I'll tell you, like, nobody ever, like, I've never stolen a joke or anything, and nobody ever steals my jokes, but I did have this open micer that kept trying to use that phrase during his set, and he didn't then tell a joke about diabetes, and I never said anything to him because I don't want to start something. I'm like, fine, but you had to hear it from me. I'm the guy that did it in the area or whatever, and so whatever, it's fine. But it does it that part works 99% of the time, of just randomly anytime in the set, if I just went, speaking of, but it works best if you're sort of, I've usually am like saying, most of this is baby fat, so I'm making some kind of fat joke, and then it's like, speaking of diabetes. So
right.
And I had a lady come up to me years ago after my set and said, how do you know about that drug? She goes, I work for the company that makes that drug. That's a real drug. I'm like, I know. Wow. I read it in a newspaper article.
Right. I do read.
Yeah, I was reading. There's an old Bill Hicks joke where he's in a Waffle House. He goes, what you reading for?
Right.
Well, so I won't be a waffle waitress.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, because this I just experienced this when we were talking about getting back with people. So like, did you follow up with this person, or did you you get referred, and did you follow? Like, I was referred recently by a very funny comedian that I work with, to her talent agency, her management agency. Right.
Oh wow.
And I'm not a I feel weird overreaching out to bookers, and it just makes me, I know guys that email them weekly and they get more, they get more work than me. It doesn't matter. Yes. So I heard back from this guy, and he says, great, I heard great things about you from when you worked with my client. Send me a clip. So I sent him my dry bar special, and 2 weeks, close to 2 weeks go by, and I reach out to the comedian I worked with, and I said, hey, I don't want to seem, what do you think is a good time frame for this management agency to kind of get back with me, whether yay or nay, or maybe they didn't like me. I don't know.
Yeah.
She goes, well, I would just leave it up to you, whatever your comfort level is in reaching out to them again. And I was like, my comfort level is never.
Yeah, my comfort level. Exactly. I'm the same way. I'm the same. And I have the exact same sort of philosophy of like, I know that there's comics that send stuff to the same bookers week after week all the time. And I can't because I don't want to, they get that a lot. And I know that in order to get noticed and booked, you gotta get yourself out there. But like every week, I heard Dusty Slay's podcast. He had Lucy from Zanies on, which she was his manager at one point, and they're really good friends. And so she was talking about like, she sort of gave how to do it, and it doesn't work for me. I can't get her to, but she's busy and I get it. But basically, like, first of the month, she's like, I'm get me on like, maybe not on Monday, but like Tuesday around the first of the month. That's when I'm like doing that kind of work, So then I'm like, when I hear that sort of thing, like I asked Moody, like I've been booked at the Comedy Catch before. I can't ever get him to like email me back.
Yeah.
So what's the secret? He was like, go on Facebook at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, Okay.
And I think you and I should be doing more private stuff too, because the pay is exorbitantly better.
Yes.
You know what? I'm kind of tired of fighting for a comedy club spot that I'm going to perhaps maybe even lose money on, depending on the gas or the drive or whatever. So
Yes.
it's not only going back to us trying to become a draw, getting more TV spots and charging more money, but doing those private shows. And then I've
It's a
run across.
that's a double-edged sword, that whole thing of like, when I started getting some work, I had these older comics in my area telling me, you got to do corporate work. You got to do corporate work. And I wasn't like against it, but I'm like, I'm smart enough to know, like, to get seen, you don't get seen doing a country club gig, or, a gig for IBM or whatever. Like you get seen in the clubs and that sort of thing. And that's how you get noticed. And so, but they are right. Like that is, I mean, I got friends, they're typically older, and they do corporate gigs all year long, and they make six figures better. You know what I mean? Doing corporate
and
gigs.
no one's heard of them, right? Or very few.
Yeah, but some of them definitely not. Some of them are like but they are success nonetheless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would love to be able to make enough money that my wife didn't have to work as hard as she does.
Sure.
A nice way to put it.
Yeah.
My wife has the job that keeps us from being homeless. So
right. Yeah, it's I like doing the comedy clubs still. It's sort of I try to do them not as much as I used to, but because I do the private shows, but it's nice to sometimes to kind of go into a comedy like, oh, this is what I did for 15 years.
Yeah.
For the most part, exclusively before I got into the private shows and whatnot.
I was always like, I'll do whatever I can as long as I'm not getting hosed or it's not a terrible gig. And the guy who used to own Good Nights here in Raleigh, he was in a business with another guy. They were booking country clubs. So I started getting country clubs early on, and that's when I was like, all right, well, you got to wear a suit. Usually the guy who booked you wanted you to have a sound system and lights, because country clubs invariably don't have a good sound system, or they only have overhead lights or whatever. So I've got like a really great spotlight, and I got a whole sound system, and I take it with me, and I end up using it at all kind of gigs, not just, country club gigs. So, then you're your own tech guy sitting there hooking everything up. Yeah.
You're sweating even more from the setup.
Yes.
I had I don't know if you've ever experienced this. So I had a conversation a few years ago with a talent agency out of Nashville, the head of it. And I said, I'm interested in representation. I said, here's who I am. This is a pre-dry bar. And his first question was, how many followers do you have? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not like if I could get off social media, I would.
Yes.
He goes, if you're not good at marketing yourself, how am I supposed to be good at it? And I'm like, well, that's why I want a representation.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes, well, back in the day, we used to find comedians, right? We used to find them and then kind of cultivate them and get them a brand and an audience. Now, he goes, it's a little different with social media. He goes, once you hit X followers, I can help get you into theaters. I'm like, well, if I have X followers, I can book theaters without
and that's when you find out that they don't do everything that you think that they do.
Right.
Do you know about the story of like Dane Cook and how he came to be?
He was like one of the first social media sensations, right?
Yeah, he was on MySpace, and he was on MySpace, and this was right about the time that I was starting stand-up. I'd already done improv for about 6 years, and I started doing stand-up, and I'm learning about this, and MySpace was a thing, and somehow he knew how to do some coding, so he knew how to like make his MySpace look different than everybody else's, and all this stuff, and he learned how to market himself. So he got a following from doing social media before anybody else did.
Right.
And so I think it set a precedent for people to where they have to sort of have this maniacal following before people will pay attention. But to the other extent of that, then you've got people that are getting booked in comedy clubs based on their followers, but they weren't a comedian.
Right.
If that make, like, they've never, I mean, I talked to a buddy the other day, goes, yeah, I met a YouTube star or TikTok star or whatever. He's got a tour set up. He's got a whole tour set up. He's never performed in front of an audience before. I'm like, that blows my mind. And I, I'm an old fogey, but at the same time, I'm not that old. So I try not to have that mindset of like, that's not the way you do it. Like, I know it's different. It always changes, and I get it. But man, that is such an odd thing to look at that way. Like, I would think you would want to get out there, get some stage experience before you did something like that. But
I think so. It could go in two different directions, right? It can go, they can tour for as many venues will book them before the bad news gets out.
Yeah.
Right. And then they can't sell tickets anymore.
Yes.
Or they'll do it and they'll slowly but surely, making a ton of money, develop an act. And good for them, right? They got the followers, and they put in the work, but they happen to do it in front of 1,000 people a night or 5,000 people. So, because I met someone like that recently who developed a large following and then took on stand-up because people were requesting, can you come to our church? Can you come to our comedy club? Can you come to our venue?
Right.
And they put in the work, and man, she puts on a great show, and it looks like a solid tenured comedian. And we talked about that a little bit after the show and texting and stuff. I said, man, it looks like you're putting in the work like crazy.
Yeah.
So you could see, like, we've seen people win, like, maybe not Last Comic Standing, but something like that. And they get all the followers, and all of a sudden they book these theater. And then, 5 years later, they can't because they never put the work in. So I think as long as they put the work in, to develop a show, but it goes back to us. So, like, I told a young comic recently, I was like, I don't have any right to tell a comedy club to pay me more unless people are coming up to the door, hey, or calling, is this Danny Johnson's show? I want to, if they're coming, I have to be a draw, and that's up to me. And I'm terrible at social media. Look how long it took me to do this podcast. I've been, you know what I mean? Like, this is my first foray into this.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff is daunting. I think some of it is, I think some people, I think, take, for example, Bo Burnham. Like, he was completely a YouTube star that is now a comedian and actor and all this stuff. Like, he doesn't have a wife and kids and other responsibilities. He started doing this when he, and I mean, from the moment I've done comedy, I had a wife, and then I had kids, and it is, when I started working with certain bookers, I tell them right up front, I have a wife, I have two kids. One of them's 20 now, but the other one is chock full of issues, we'll call it. And so, like, I tell them ahead of time, like, I'm not leaving my house to drive across the country for $100 in Indiana. Like, I'm not doing that. I know you got comics that will, and good for them.
Yeah.
But I'm not that guy. Yeah. And so, like, it's got to be worth my while. I don't need it to be a wash.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the advantage that the young people have, is they don't have some of those responsibilities. Like, I don't know how a young person, say you're a comic in New York, I don't know how they live unless they definitely, because I've done like career day at my kid's school, and I tell them, like, look, to be a comic, you have to really love it, and you have to have another job. You have to do something else, because I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I still do freelance graphic design. And I honestly, I'm good at it. So even if I were to become famous, I probably would still have customers that I've had for years go, hey man, can you make me this flyer? Or can you make me a logo? I could be like on the Tonight Show tomorrow night, and they'd be like, hey, I saw you on the Tonight Show. Listen, can I get it in orange and then blue?
Right.
So,
or be single and have someone's couch you can crash on for a long period of time.
Yes. Yeah.
No,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like they have a particular advantage, and then they have all the time in the world. And some days I feel like I do have all the time in the world, but most days I don't. Most days it's like, all right, I got to put out this fire and that stuff and whatever, appointment. So it's like I can't devote what they can, and I haven't learned all. I mean, I'm a graphic designer. I know how to make a lot of neat looking stuff. I haven't mastered the art of editing video, and like I think that's one of those things that like you don't realize all the stuff you end up having to do as a comedian outside of writing and telling jokes. I mean, the self-promotion, you can't not self-promote unless you just don't want people to come see you. Like I do it all the time. And it's never my favorite, but I try to have fun with it. Like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to, have fun, make some fun looking flyers or, promotional or whatever. So, but I mean, again, it just kind of comes with the territory. So that's what I tell people. I'm like, when I did career day, my kid's school was like, your teacher has a job. He doesn't have to go message 6 other schools tomorrow to find out where he's working. It's like, he has a job. It's like, not me. I was like, I have a job this weekend, but I got to go message a bunch of other people to find out if I can work the future weekends.
That would be great if teachers had to get booked. I'm looking to get booked next week at Smith Elementary.
I know. Listen, I got these second graders over here at Smith Elementary love me.
Right. But, I got a video. I got a short clip of me doing Spanish.
That is awesome. I love that. That's it.
Do you have you come across comedians that will work for any dollar amount and it's sort of hurting what you are trying to get booked?
If they do, I don't know about it. Okay. And I have always worried that I was doing that because I wasn't always good at charging people. I think I've gotten better at it, but I think at the same time, like I try to have like a minimum that I'm going to leave the house for per distance. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if I'm gonna go here,
they're
going to pay me this. And like, it's, my wife will sometimes be like, why did you go do that if there was only 7 people? I'm like, well, I got paid this. You're like, well, I guess that wasn't that bad. Like, I was like, I can't help that only 7 people showed up. I promoted it. I don't know if the venue did, but I did.
Right.
Because honestly, I do most of the promotional stuff for most of the shows I'm in because A, I have time to make them, and B, I hate what they've done or they haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So if you've created a terrible flyer, I will just make one and I'll just put it up. And the number of times that the venue goes, oh, this looks good. And I've gone to venues where they have my poster that I made printed up and around the club, which I think is hilarious because I'm like, you could have which I get that they don't necessarily know that, but at the same time, I'm like,
hey, at least comedy flyers aren't busy.
Yeah. There's have you ever seen the Facebook page about bad comedy flyers?
No, I gotta find it.
There's a whole Facebook page for bad comedy flyers.
I've never seen a good one. They're all it's I don't even know where's the address.
So that's why that's what I'm telling. I mean, I made the yellow pages for years, so I'm good about like you got to have this. You got to have these elements in it for it to work, and you don't need a glazing star over every word that's in there and all this stuff that you can't read it anymore, and whatever it is. So I went on there and probably more worried that I was going to see mine, but I'm like, I am a professional graphic designer. I am good at this. I know more about fonts than most people know about, their own kids. I'm like, I know way too much about fonts. So like, I'm good at it. And I never would see my flyers, but the stuff that I would see people say about the other flyers and the people in it and stuff, I was like, I can't be on here anymore.
I would love to see you technically critique someone's flyer in person. Like someone's like, hey, what do you think of my flyer? Like, was that Arial 9? Is that Arial 9?
Yes, I have done that. There's this thing called The Funniest Accountant, and I'm not remotely an accountant, but they found me and had me close out shows so they could have a real comedian, as they would say.
Right.
And I went and did it in Atlanta, and so their logo is supposed to be like a guy laughing, but this is how he looks.
Is he yawning?
So I was on stage the first time, and I didn't know that the guy who'd hired me was the guy that created the logo.
Oh, no.
But I just tore it to shreds. I'm like, listen, I don't want to say anything, but maybe it's a perfect logo because it's accountants telling jokes, and this guy's falling asleep and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it is one of those things where I have to kind of keep myself in check with like, don't say anything, don't say anything, because I like, if you're using, what Comic Sans and crap for, so that's me. That's me.
I should have had you do my digital artwork for my thumbnail for this podcast. I had somebody.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to, but if you've already done it, I get it. But yeah, so that's what I mean. That's the thing. I make logos. I made logo just this week. I made a flyer today, so I do it all the time, man.
I've seen your drawings too. You got some great sketches that you've posted on.
Yeah, I am a guy with an art degree, so I do know my preferred medium is color pencil, and I try to do like hyper realistic looking stuff. So I like doing animals and that sort of thing, but occasionally people, and just try to make it look exactly like them, but with color pencils.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. It can be tedious, but I love it. It's good.
Along the same lines of creativity, did you happen to see Dry Bar animated a clip from a Dry Bar special? Made it a cartoon and posted it.
Which one?
So they only did it once, and it was for one of who Josh Sneed is?
Yes.
He does a great garage sale bit, and they animated it, and I commented, and I'm like, please do one of mine. It's been a fantasy of mine to have a cartoon of one of my bits. Like,
same.
I need to find someone who can do that.
I've wanted to do cartoon voices my whole life.
Me too.
And it's all, I mean, honestly, I've always wanted to do it. And I think I'm just so worried about getting rejected, but I'm like, I just want to, like, I think I could go to a talent agency in the area, because I know people that end up getting to do it. And I'm like, I should just go and do it. These dang kids, they'll hurt all your prospects.
I've done voiceover work, both serious stuff and like training videos and stuff like that. And to me, I love it. There's really not a lot of pressure. You just re-record it if they don't like the way you said it. You're in a booth, you make great money, but it would be great if it was something funny.
Yes.
To do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing, is I would like it. But even if it was like, like Dora the Explorer, like I like doing cartoon voices.
Yeah.
So I could sit there and do this all day.
Right.
And I would love it. It would be like the best ever for me. It would just love, like, I was watching the Stranger Things thing, the last season of Stranger Things, and I realized that I could talk like the villain, Vecna. And so I was like, oh, that's awesome. I wish I could somehow, like, I'm just sitting there mocking it. I'm not mocking it, but I'm sitting there trying to do it while I'm watching it in the dark. Going, I can't remember anything he said, but I was like, what are you doing here, Max? And I was just like I think I have to have like some, like, eat some cheese or whatever beforehand, but it like would work. And I was like, this is awesome. I love it.
You ever heard that Kevin Pollak is, right? Few Good Men.
Yes, I got to work with him. Yeah,
me too. It was funny, at the end of the week of me working with him, I said, hey, if I'm ever out in LA, and he completed my sentence, he goes, don't look me up, all right? Leave me alone.
He didn't talk to me for long. But I did get to work with him.
I saw him on some show recently, and he was telling a story about A Few Good Men, and he said they were finished filming, and they needed Nicholson for a couple more days, so they said, I know your contract's up, and we can't afford to pay you anymore. Can you please stay for 2 more days or however? And he goes, or you have me till noon on Tuesday. That's it. He goes, so at noon. So they're filming this courtroom scene, the famous courtroom scene. So sure enough, they're filming, the judge does his lines, Nichols does, and then noon shows up, Jack stands up and leaves. He didn't even say that, he just leaves, he's done. And the judge still had a few more lines to record, and Kevin Pollak, having done an impression of Nicholson for years and years, said, hey, if the judge needs someone to read the line. So sure enough, he's off camera spitting out the lines in the voice of Nicholson to the judge, and it worked out perfectly.
That is so awesome.
Isn't that great?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That's one of those things I love. And I'm a big Saturday Night Live fan. I love watching that and doing some of the voices that they do. And I just love it, man. It's so awesome.
Did you see Mike Myers? You mentioned your comedy, I'm just silly. And I like that. I'm silly. I saw an interview with Mike Myers talking about his new Netflix series, right? So I watched it.
Yeah.
It's
the Pentaveret.
Yes, right. The Pentaveret.
Yes.
Which is silly. And he talks about it. He goes, I like silly. He goes, sometimes it will be a poignant joke or a relevant joke to what's going on. Sometimes it'll be silly, and I prefer silly. So everything is to get laughs, and it was just so that reminded me of that when you said that.
I mean, and that's honestly, I know that there's people who are like, you're not one of those comedians that's always on. I'm not, but that's who I am. Like I am in the grocery store making jokes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's how I ended up doing this to begin with, is I say these because I'm witty. I say these things that come to my head. And as long as they aren't like wildly inappropriate, then I just say them and make people laugh. And so why wouldn't I do it at the grocery store if I can make this cashier who looks miserable laugh for 2 minutes?
Yeah. I'm the same way. People after a show often ask me what's wrong. And I'm like, nothing. I'm done.
Yeah.
But in everyday scenarios, I'm talking to my neighbors, my friends, or whatever, or someone in the grocery, I am looking for the funny constantly.
Yes.
Yeah. So whatever comes out of my mouth is an effort to make a smile. If I can get you to smile and change your mood a little bit, I'm good. Yeah. If you start talking to me for like 20 minutes, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how the heck do I get out of here?
Yes.
All right. So just let me get the laugh and then let me get out of here.
My wife and I have this other couple that we hang out with, and they came to a show, and after the show they said, "Are we your test audience?" And I was like, "No." I said, I understand why you would think that. I said, but think about it like this. If we're talking about something and I say something funny, or we all start talking or whatever, I'm like, and I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I've hung out with these people and been falling on the floor laughing. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm desperately going to try to remember that later, because if it made me laugh that hard, like it's got to be pretty good. And it doesn't, and if they said it, like there's one where the lady said it, but I just turned it into my wife. And I even told her, like, hey, I tell this one and it's you and me. But I said, but I'm just make it my wife, because it'd be real weird if I tried to explain you and me sitting in a car late at night.
Yeah.
So they thought that I was like testing jokes out on them. I was like, and every now and then we're talking about something, and maybe I've had an idea for a joke.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the thing I'm talking about, and I just say the stuff that I've been thinking.
Yeah.
And I said, so it seems like you're my test audience, but not really, because I don't go around doing that. There's comics who'll, let me run this joke by or whatever. And that's fine. It's not the end of the world to me. But, I try not to do that to civilians, as they say. I don't,
to the regular people.
Yeah, to you civilians.
I'll do so along those same lines, Andy. What I'll do in conversation with people, and I try to avoid, gatherings and parties and stuff. And
Same.
If I find something funny or interesting, or it's along the same lines of a premise I have written down somewhere, I'll ask a lot of questions. So if they say something like, I went here because my knee was hurt. So why did you choose that? Why did you choose to go there? I want more information so I can pull.
Yes. Yeah. So you can out. Get that out of them. That's a good point. That is an excellent.
Why would you do that? Why did they say that? Is that required? And blah blah blah. So on and so forth. And then I'll try to remember. It's in my notes, and sometimes I don't even remember.
Yeah, that's the bad part, is when you've I have been known to message people and be like, what were we laughing at again?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, you said that. Oh, okay, thanks. I'm like, because it may not ever make it into the act, but I'm like, it was good. And I at least wanted to see if I could flesh it out into something. So
yeah, I think you and I both have notebooks full of stuff not in the act, that it was just an idea.
Yeah, I got bookshelves full of them. They're and it's nuts. Every now and then I'll go revisit them and be like, I've been telling this one for how long?
Yeah. Tom Simmons, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very funny comedian friend. He has a great line that he used to use in his act where he goes, every time he gets into an argument with his wife will go, Tom, don't you dare be using this in your act. You understand me? And he pauses and he goes, for example.
Oh man. Yeah, I get that from the wife. On usually it's the stuff about the kids. I posted something recently and she instantly saw it. Just take that down.
Yeah.
I was like, but they're being idiots. And she's like, I don't know. Just take it down. She goes, people can see it from church or wherever.
Yeah.
And I don't, she goes, it'll, you know,
I have relatives.
I don't get edited often ever.
I have relatives requesting, do you have a joke about me yet? I'm like, I don't know. You haven't done.
That is so funny because my mother-in-law thought I told jokes about her for years. I'm like, no, not at all. My brother also thought that. And I said, one time, I said, I was at Good Nights here in Raleigh, which is right beside NC State. I said, and a group of NC State students came to the show.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're in engineering. It's like, oh, my brother was an engineer. It took him 7 years to graduate. He works over in Taiwan now in a hazmat suit. So good luck to you. And I told him that. And so he thinks I tell that all the time. I'm like, no, like one time, dude. Like,
yeah. And so, and I don't think people realize too, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but sometimes someone that I'm referring to in a joke, a character or a person is a combination of people.
Yes, of course. So
it's like my neighbor and an 8th grade English teacher. If they were the same, they had a baby, it would be this.
Yeah,
person.
like you know, like if I wanted to start talking about my wife's grandparents are hilarious, especially Meemaw. So I have tried to tell jokes about her, but I think a better way for me to go about it is to say old people.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, I can't wait, you know, like I've been thinking about like doing it, was like, I can't wait to be, you know, an old person so I can start doing some crazy stuff, like, you know, just giving out silk boxers at a restaurant, you know, to a grandson or whatever. Here you go, you know, like just weird stuff, you know, like just come up with, like, that's a good way of, like, now you're not singling anybody out, but, you know, it, like, I've seen old people watch comedy and they're just kind of like, you know, so
I'm working on this bit about older couples, and I don't know if I'll ever get it to work, but I've never done it on stage. I'm just in the kind of thing, you know, writing it out and stuff like that. But it's a combination of like 6 different older couples that I've seen try to tell a story, which is my favorite, right? Because the guy will go, all right, so, you know, we were in Myrtle Beach golfing in April. It wasn't April. It was May. You got your gallbladder out in April. He's like, all right, so it was March. So it was me, my uncle, my brother, our old neighbor.
It's not your brother.
It wasn't your brother. He wasn't even there. All right. You want to tell it?
Yeah.
You want to tell it? No, you tell it. You have the associate's degree, Mr. Smart Man. Why don't you? And it starts getting like passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're just I don't even want to be there for the story. I'm curled up.
Yeah. I was better when we didn't start this story. I felt a lot safer.
Is this story any shorter?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know how long you wanted this to be.
No, we're good, man. I think we covered what we'd like. I can't thank you enough. My first ever guest on my podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the first guest. I'm happy to do it, man. I love talking comedy. I love talking shop. I like the dry bar comedy, man. I love it. I'm still proud of it. You know, and if that's the only thing,
I like how you just ended the podcast. You're like, I don't know how long you want this to be, but I got responsibilities.
Well,
I've got things.
I know that. Yeah. It's so hard to explain what goes on in my house. I mean, while I'm sitting here, there's a dog that is scratching at that door, like, none of these other people are gonna walk me. Like,
okay. I am so socially awkward that whoever I'm with has to kind of point, like, to stop making that face. Like if a story's too long, I'm just like,
yeah. My wife does that to me too. She'll be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, what? She goes, you look like you smell something terrible.
Yeah, we just met these people. Could you
just... Yes, that's exactly it. We just met these people.
Is there a comedian around I can talk to?
And she's like, well, and I'll be like, well, what am I doing? She goes, this is what you look like. I was like, why would I do that? She goes, I don't know.
Right. So, all right. So what's your website? It's not AndyForrester. It's comic. What is it?
Comicbiga.com. So my nickname is Big A. I'm a big guy. My name's Andy. And I'm a comic. So Comic Big A. And that's my handle on all the socials. So at Comic Big A on everything.
Watch the special. Most of this is baby fat, especially the tortoise closer and the stuff about hoarders. I watched it again yesterday. Super funny.
I appreciate it.
And that's more royalties for you. I have it on a loop. I have it on a loop on 3 devices right now.
That's what I should do. That's what I need to do. That's what Brad Upton did. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so thanks for being on the podcast. If you want to hang out after I stop recording this, we can chat for a little bit, just 2 minutes. But thanks. You've been listening to Behind the Bar, Andy Forrester, Danny Johnson. Thank you so much.
Bye.